If they don't include a plan to pay for long-term care, they're incomplete. I don't think a good financial plan or a good estate plan can exist without a strategy to pay for long-term care. And there's really two ways to do it. You can self-insure or you can use other people's money to do it. And it depends on your situation, how that works. And it's okay. There's some things we can and can't do. We just got to figure out how we're going to do it. So inflation is really the biggest risk in retirement. All the other risks come from inflation. So when we build a retirement plan, that's what we have to have a plan to fight. But really our goal is we've got to beat inflation. You're losing purchasing power if you're not beating inflation. And that's what we cannot have happen in retirement. And so we have to build the portfolio to match that.
Hey, man, we're back. Okay. We had so much fun last time with those 5.
Yeah.
There's 4 more that we've discussed and come up with that I want to talk about. And the next one, the first one for this video, is where I live.
Yes.
Okay. This is where I live as an elder law attorney. People come to me when mom or dad or spouse are going into the nursing home.
Yep.
Long-term care cost. And I recommend you look around your locality and see how much nursing homes are or assisted living. There are some assisted living that's less care, but they're more expensive because they're cool and hip, and there's a lot of things going on there. But
Yeah.
I will tell you, in our jurisdiction, Northwest Arkansas, which tends to be cheaper than most places, we're approaching $10,000 per month.
And now that's at the time of this recording. So if you're watching this in a couple of years, it's probably higher than that.
Yeah, this is late 2024. And oh, look, we have fireworks. Yay. So, yeah, it's $10,000 a month, and people don't want to think about going into the nursing home.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. My kids will take care of me. My spouse will take care of me. I'll just live at home, or I'll just die, and I won't need long-term care. And
It pretty rarely happens that way in practice.
It's
tough to say it, but
I mean, I spend a lot of my working days dealing with people who thought they would never go into the nursing home, or kids dealing with parents. It's like, we can't do this anymore. And so a huge regret is not being proactive and thinking about that. And we've come up with the idea that if your financial advisor, by the time you're mid 50s, has not brought up long-term care, you really need to consider talking to someone else, if not getting a new advisor,
I think that's
because
fair. Yeah.
that is crucial. It is a real thing that's going to happen. And what's even more sad is there are tools out there. There's some products that we like that, if you need long-term care, it'll pay for long-term care. And if you don't need long-term care, it'll pay money to your heirs. Okay. It's super cool. It's like you're going to get your money back one way or the other. So take this lump sum and do something with it that will either pay for your long-term care or leave money to your kids.
You know, I'm willing to say it this strongly. I think a financial plan and an estate plan, which they should work together, they don't always, but your estate plan and your financial plan, if they don't include a plan to pay for long-term care, they're incomplete. I don't think a good financial plan or a good estate plan can exist without a strategy to pay for long-term care. And there's really two ways to do it. You can self-insure or you can use other people's money to do it. And it depends on your situation, how that works. And it's okay. There's some things we can and can't do. We just got to figure out how we're going to do it. And what we find is when folks understand what the plan is, it seems like they can spend a lot more freely.
Yeah.
You know, the two big things that people are concerned about in retirement, running out of money and long-term care. And they're typically very related. So if we can address those and you feel permission because we've done good planning and you're following the plan to spend, it seems to me from my perspective that people enjoy their retirement more.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's a huge one. That one we should do like multiple shows on. I'm sure we will.
We can. The next regret is something you're very passionate about, is income in retirement. Okay. And it's not just how much money you have. We've done shows on benchmarks of, 10 times your retirement, 12 times your retirement, whatever. Those numbers have some meaning, but the real issue is income.
Yeah.
How you need income to live. You need to pay your bills. You need to do things, and you need income. People don't understand the different ways to get income in retirement.
So that's something where So many shows about this, but
It's
um,
true.
you know, optimizing Social Security is such a big, powerful tool that gets missed a lot of times. And a lot of times people, will scare the clients with it. And, that's a whole other issue. But, you know, there's really two ways to think about it. If Social Security is the only piece of income in your retirement, you got to delay as long as you can.
Mhm.
But if you have other assets in, investments, retirement accounts, whether it's, annuities or real estate, we need to take all of those into consideration because the timing of when you turn on that Social Security and create that income is really, it's dramatic, the amount of impact it can have on your plan. And I think what a lot of folks miss too is we've got to think about, if you're married, if you have a spouse, what's going to happen when one of you passes away, and thinking through those
Sure.
scenarios, because it doesn't always happen at the same time, but it
Mhm.
is going to happen. And so we need to create a plan for how that's going to work. And when we're claiming Social Security, that's a really important thing that I think most people miss.
Mhm.
And that can adjust our claiming strategy based on your situation and how that works.
Yeah. All right. Next to last one. I think
Mm,
most people
mm-mm.
who are older understand you don't need to be in highly aggressive investments. We've seen it, and it's
Yep.
like, oh, stop. And but I think people understand we don't need to be aggressive. We don't want to go up and down, up and down, up and down. But the 180 to that, we see people that are way too conservative. They're
Yeah.
like, I don't want my money to go up or down. I want to make sure it's safe. And you're a big advocate of educating people on we've talked about the B word, the I
Hmm.
word.
Yep.
And for a lot of years, 20, 21, 22, inflation was basically a non issue.
Hmm.
Well, now our government's given out so much money and done so many things that inflation has
It's
gone
back
up.
with a vengeance. Yeah.
And that will destroy someone's investments.
This is something, gosh, we should do a whole thing on this one too. Um, you know, I get some flack from some of my peers. In those years, I got some flack from them because when I would do plans in our software, we can set what the expected inflation rate is going to be.
Ooh.
And they would underestimate it, in my opinion. They would, it would be 1.5, 2%, and I'm like, I used the 100+ year average. I think it's 106 year we have tracking for it right now. And it's like 3.24% or 3.26%.
Is
I
the average.
is the average over the last, 106 years roughly. That's what I use in my planning because if I'm planning, especially an early retiree, the mistake that I'm unwilling to make is to assume that things are going to be sunshine and rainbows. And I say it in meetings. I say, look,
Sure.
I'm not going to do the sunshine and rainbow thing
Hmm.
because I'm going to do this for a long time. And if we have to make an adjustment, I want to do it now, not in 20 years when we don't have time to make it up.
Sure.
Now, so inflation is really the biggest risk in retirement. All the other risks come from inflation. So when we build a retirement plan, that's what we have to have a plan to fight. Where we get into trouble is we have a mismatch of investments and time horizon. We are proponents of modern portfolio theory. I'll explain to you very simply. You don't have to become a PhD in this. It's so intuitive, it's so obvious, but like they wrote it down and they get to call it what they want. Risk and return are correlated. They're not always exactly the same, but they're correlated. And if you take more risk, you should expect and be given a higher return for the risk that you took.
Sure.
This just makes sense. And so the challenge that people have is they get lumped into these different buckets by their compliance, frankly, which is like, okay, well, based on your risk tolerance, you're a conservative investor, so you got to have these investments. And I go, whoa, 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 like that. Okay, we have to do risk tolerance for compliance, yes, but there's also some, not only is there risk tolerance, how much volatility you're comfortable with, but we also have to have something called risk capacity. Some of our clients that don't take enough risk, at least when they came to us, they have a much higher risk capacity than their risk tolerance.
Mhm.
And so that's where education and building the right portfolio comes in. If you can afford to stomach a little bit more volatility, and we build a portfolio that's well diversified that can minimize that risk, then the risk capacity is much more important than the risk tolerance. And it takes some education to get through that. But really, our goal is we've got to beat inflation. You're losing purchasing power if you're not beating inflation, and that's what we cannot have happen in retirement. And so we have to build the portfolio to match that. And so this is a huge challenge for a lot of folks, especially as they get older. They want to preserve their wealth, and that makes perfect sense. It makes sense to preserve the wealth. The problem is things like CDs and things like short term bonds. They don't keep up with inflation.
Yeah.
And so you're not actually preserving your wealth. You have the illusion of preserving wealth. And that's a big, big problem.
And it's a big illusion.
It's a
Yeah,
big illusion.
it's big. And so our last regret kind of goes along with that is you do need to have diversification, not just in your investments, but also in your income.
Yeah.
Some people are like, okay, we're going to dump everything into this one annuity because it's going to pay this much income. Well, things happen. The annuity, you need diversification, not just in your investments, but also in your income sources.
I love that you bring this one up because everyone's plan needs to be different, and the way that we create income in retirement needs to be different for everyone. And where we find people uh, have errors sometimes is they assume that something that has worked for a period of time is always going to work, and they put all their eggs in that basket, whether
Sure.
that's real estate, whether that's the S&P, whether that's some annuity or something. We need a little bit of everything, because especially we want to think about how do we have assets that aren't necessarily correlated with each other, so that if things are unpredictable, you know, look, very frankly, we've been in a really long bull run in large cap US stocks, historically unprecedented, in fact. Now, if we're betting people, what do you think the odds are that's going to continue in perpetuity? I don't
So,
know. I mean, if we knew, we would be having this conversation on a yacht, right? But
sure.
the idea is just because it's worked for the most recent period or for a little while doesn't mean it's always going to work. And so we want to diversify, particularly our income streams, so that even if for a couple of years one is not doing well, like just so you guys know, real estate doesn't always go up. Like there's a couple of houses on my neighborhood that you would think that they would be rented. They've been not rented for like 6 months, and we're in a hot market.
Wow.
And so, guys, just saying, like nothing, those kind of things aren't guaranteed. We've got to have a backup plan for these pieces. So diversifying not only your investments but your income sources makes a ton of sense. So look, in the last couple of videos, we've covered a lot of these big retirement mistakes, retirement pitfalls, but I don't want you to think that these are the only things that really go into building a great retirement plan. Just avoiding some of these mistakes doesn't mean that you're positioned to make a good plan, which is exactly why we created the quiz that we created. This is general ideas. This is not specific advice, obviously, but we created this quiz to help give you a better understanding and personalize, your situation and understand where you are, and whether or not implementing some strategies could be helpful to you. So click the link below in that description. Fill out the quiz. We'll get a video back to you in our software of exactly the way we work with clients that'll show you whether or not you're on track, what some potential pitfalls are, personalized to your situation, so that you can begin to make some better decisions.
That's pretty cool. All right, guys, we will see you next time.